With that, welcome. So Introduction to PowerPoint Accessibility, Exploring Best Practices and New Tools. My name is Darren Wright, by the way. I am the Universal Technical Assistance Lead, as well as the Dissemination Communication Lead at the Weiss Center. And joining me today are two of our accessibility specialists. So I will introduce them quickly. So Valerie Morrison will be first up on our agenda. She is the Document Accessibility Lead for the Weiss Center and manages the eText unit at Georgia Tech CIDI. And then Nora Sinclair, who is an accessibility specialist and a technical assistance provider with the Weiss Center. And she is an instructional designer and content developer at CIDI. So these two individuals, I know from firsthand experience, have a lot of knowledge to share, and we could probably fill an hour and a half to 2 hours worth of content on this topic. So with that, let's continue. The agenda. We are going to break the ice a little bit with a poll, as I mentioned. This will be just to get a sense of your familiarity with the content that is creating accessible PowerPoint presentations. We also then will talk about key strategies and best practices as it relates to PowerPoint accessibility before diving into a screen reader demo. That will be a recorded demo that we will play as part of our presentation, about 9 minutes. And then we will dive into the accessibility features and tools built into Microsoft PowerPoint that can assist you in ensuring accessible PowerPoint presentations for everyone. And last but not least, we'll wrap up with some QA, an evaluation, and then some helpful resources to help you along the way if you wanted to do anything right now. In terms of making PowerPoint content accessible, there are resources that we and our partners have available that you can get that started. Okay, so starting with a poll. So creating accessible PowerPoint presentations. The question is, how familiar are you with creating accessible PowerPoint presentations? I'll read through these and then launch the poll. 1, not familiar. As an example, I usually create PowerPoint presentations by repurposing old decks, and I'm unaware if these are fully accessible. Somewhat familiar. I apply alternative text to images and ensure good color contrast. Is there more? 3, very familiar. I regularly investigate and resolve accessibility issues in PowerPoint and always ensure the content is accessible. So that poll was just launched. We'll take a moment for folks to answer. See a bunch of requests coming in very quickly. Fantastic. And I saw in the chat, I need an option between 2 and 3. Very fair. I'm sure you will fall. There are probably many of you who share that in terms of where you fall on it. We didn't want to make it too large of an option set, but fair enough. I think I probably fall somewhere in between there as well, or at least used to before I met Nora and Valerie. Okay, we have about 85% of participants. Response rate has slowed a bit. I'll give it another moment. Okay. Great. So on your screen right now, you should be seeing the shared results of this poll. So it seems like the majority, over 50% of those in attendance today, are somewhat familiar with PowerPoint accessibility. Maybe know enough to be dangerous, but not quite enough to ensure that things are fully accessible. That is what we anticipated in terms of a response to this. So good. Hopefully we can move some of you, if not all of you, into that third option of very familiar by the end of this presentation. Thank you all for engaging in that poll too. With that, I will turn it over to Valerie Morrison, who will be talking about key strategies for creating accessible PowerPoint content. Valerie, take it away.
Great. Thank you so much, Darren. It's nice to be here with you all this afternoon. Thank you for joining us. And yes, we hope to drop some knowledge on you all today. I'm going to start by talking about key strategies. And if you could advance to the next slide, thank you. So this is my top 10 list of common barriers that I see in PowerPoint accessibility from all of the PowerPoints that I have worked on with our customers in higher ed, with publishers, with just corporations or state entities. These are the things that we're going to be mostly covering today. And this is just my pet peeves list, right? So missing or vague slide titles, images with no alt text description, reading order that's very confusing, which we can easily fix in PowerPoint, too much content on one slide, so there's just way too much to get through for your audience, poor color contrast or poor color resolution or poor image quality, distracting backgrounds. I know if any of you were around when PowerPoint first came on the scene, the backgrounds were so much fun to play with, but they could very easily distract from the important content you want people to focus on. Flashing images or animations are very difficult for people with disabilities to deal with or even understand or see. Embedded videos that fail to include captions. So that's something that we were really careful with our demo video today. We got great open captions on that. So it should be easy for someone to read the captions as the video plays. Unclear links, or I think Microsoft calls it non-contextual hyperlinks. So when you just paste in that URL link, the screen reader is going to read that out and it will sound like nonsense. So making a link that's very clear in plain language and then embedding the URL behind it is the most accessible best practice. And then overall having a very high language complexity, lots of jargon, lots of technical language. In a PowerPoint, you really want to convey that information as swiftly and be as concise and clear as possible. You're usually presenting to a large group. You usually have a lot to get through. And so just keeping an eye on how complex your language is. So we're going to cover a lot of this today, and I'm not sure if all of you are aware of the Title II updates that came out last year in April of 2024. The Department of Justice created a new rule under Title II of the American with Disabilities Act, and this new rule requires that state and local governments ensure that their digital content is accessible. So that means everything that you share on a website or share online, including PowerPoints, Microsoft Word documents, PDFs, and also mobile content, so any apps that you all use. So this goes into effect, some groups, depending on how large the population your group serves, this will go into effect in 2026, which is right around the corner, or 2027. So we're really trying to make people aware of all of the accessibility fixes that they're going to need to do. All right, next slide, please. So I first want to talk about your accessible fonts and colors, because the text that you have on your slide, your text and images are the most important thing, and you want it to be clear and for people to see it. Large sans serif fonts are the best. Aptos is currently Microsoft's default sans serif font, and sans serif just means without detail. So it's very easy for someone to read, especially in a large quantity. Someone's eye has to do less work because the font is streamlined. So I usually use Calibri. Everyone has their pet font, right? Arial, Verdana, all of those are wonderful choices for accessibility. And in my second bullet point here, I have an example of on a PowerPoint slide. This is the first piece of text is 24-point size Calibri font. The next is 20-point. And then your 12-point looks absolutely too tiny on a slide. 12-point is usually best practice for a Microsoft Word document, but in PowerPoint, you want to think about doubling that or more for clarity. All of our slides, we usually make sure that our titles are either 40 to 44 point in size, so they're very clear and easy to read for people. And you also, in terms of color, you want to aim for a very high contrast between your text color and your background color. We have white background with very dark blue font, which is a very high color contrast ratio. And your ratio should be 4.5 to 1 or greater. You really want that ratio to be a wide ratio. For text and for graphics, 3 to 1 is thought best practice for accessibility. And in Johan's upcoming video demonstration, where he takes a screen reader and looks at how a screen reader reads content in a PowerPoint, he's going to talk a little bit more about color contrast. This is the tool that he's going to mention, this screenshot here. It's the color contrast analyzer. It's from a company called TPGI. So if you go to their website, you can test your colors for free. I believe Adobe has a color contrast analyzer too that you could work with. And PowerPoint has actually come out with color contrast tools in their new accessibility ribbon that Nora's going to talk about later on this afternoon. Next slide, please. So another thing about color to please keep in mind is that not everybody processes color the same way. What I see as red, someone else might see as dark gray or light gray or nothing at all or brown. These color wheels on the slide are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different ways of processing color, and there are more. But I thought this was a great image to represent the wide range of ways that people interpret different colors. So if you, in your document or your PowerPoint slide, if you say, please pay attention to the dates listed in red below, not everyone's going to see that. Not everyone's going to know what the red text is. So if you do use color to convey meaning, make sure you're using some other signal like bold font, or maybe just put everything in a separate list, because not everyone processes color the same way. The first time I saw these color wheels, I was a little bit blown away. I didn't realize there was such a wide range of differences in color blindness. Next slide, please. Another thing that you want to do, PowerPoint is such an image heavy, such a visual medium, and a visual way to communicate with people. So you probably will have a lot of images, and you want to make sure to describe them with alternative text. Brief alternative text is best. If you want your audience to get comprehensive data, in this example here, I have a pie chart with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different segments. If you want them to have all of that data precisely, and it's maybe 10 slices or 15 slices, maybe include a table alongside of your graph so someone can tab through the table cells and get that data in a different modality. But if you are just incorporating brief alt text for a simple image like this one, first you're going to summarize what you see in one general informative sentence. So I like to name what type of image it is, so pie chart or pie graph, and then name whatever title, or if there is no title, say what it's representing, right? So here I would say a pie chart titled IDEA eligible students ages 3 through 5 for the 2023 to 2024 school year. And then using proper spelling, punctuation, and grammar, typing in complete sentences, adding a period at the end of your sentence, you're going to include just a simple 1 or 2 sentence description of the data here. Keep your description neutral and informative, so try not to read into or insert your own feelings about the information you're describing. Just describe what you see for your audience. So the alt text that I've written for this particular image, my first sentence gives that overview, and then the second sentence sums up the data in a very kind of regular parallel structure way for someone listening. You want to keep things simple because someone listening wants to be able to follow your logic. So here my alt text would be a pie chart titled IDEA eligible students ages 3 through 5. The 5 sections of the pie graph include developmental developmental delay at 45.3%, speech language impairment at 31.9%, autism at 17.6%, all other categories at 2.9%, and other health impairment at 2.3%. And usually when I'm describing graphs, I start at the highest and end at the lowest percentage. Next slide, please. So getting into the nitty-gritty of PowerPoint ribbon, the home ribbon, and all of the built-in tools that you could use to make your slides accessible, one of the most important things that you could learn is taking advantage of the built-in accessible templates and layouts. So on your home ribbon in PowerPoint, click on Layout, and you can select a template with several content placeholders. This screenshot shows you some different options, right? Just a title and one accessible content placeholder, two content, a comparison that has the title, two titles, two subtitles, and two content placeholders. Always try and use these built-in layouts for two reasons. One, if you are old school like me, AKA old, and you learned PowerPoint a long time ago, the easiest way to add text content is to go to that Insert tab and insert a text box and just start typing. The problem with that is that sometimes the screen reader may skip that text content if it's inserted as a text box. If you insert it into a layout accessible placeholder, it will always show up in the outline view, and it will always be read by the screen reader. The second reason why this is important is if you are using these layouts, if you look at them, none of these little text boxes are overlapping one another. And sometimes when you insert content, you move stuff around a lot on a PowerPoint slide, your text boxes can overlap and a screen reader starts reading aloud the dimensions of the box in a really kind of annoying way. So we'll talk more about that in a little bit. Next slide, please. Okay, great. So this screenshot shows you the slide on the right with just a title, NCES percentage of students with disabilities by state, and an image of the United States with different colors for different states and some data. And then that's my slide. That's all I have. I have a title and an image on the slide. And then on the left, I've gone to the View tab. And instead of having all of the thumbnails on the left-hand side of PowerPoint, I have the outline view. So the normal view in the top left, that's the thumbnails. That's what people are used to looking at. As someone who's always working on the accessibility of PowerPoints, I always turn on this outline view, and that shows me in bold all of my slide titles and all of the text and what order it's going to be read. So this is kind of a cheat sheet for me to know my text is showing up, it's in the correct order, and I love turning on this outline view to show me the behind the scenes, how the screen reader is going to access all my content. Next slide, please. So again, you want to make sure your slide titles aren't vague or repetitive. How many of us have been trapped in a PowerPoint presentation or a webinar where it's just introduction, 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 or research updates, research updates, research. It's the same. They keep advancing the slide, but it's the same topic over and over again. If you can find a way, either to say part 1, part 2, part 3, or find a way to make these slide titles distinctive, it helps people focus on what you're talking about, and it feels like there's some progression through your presentation, and it helps you focus too on what exactly you want to talk about on this particular slide. So having those descriptive slide titles is very helpful in terms of your presentation how it's received. It's also incredibly important for someone using a screen reader because they can pull up a list of all of your slide headings and navigate to the one they're interested in. So having those slide titles be accurate and descriptive really helps someone with their navigation. Next slide, please. So we also talked a little bit at the beginning about having confusing reading order. When someone is using a screen reader, and you'll see this in Johan's demo, when they're accessing something via PowerPoint, they hit Tab to hear each object on the slide read aloud. So Tab, title, Tab, figure, Tab, text, and it'll read aloud each object. So if you have them out of order, if you have those objects out of order, it can be confusing. To make sure that the reading order is correct, you can open that outline view and make sure, or you can go directly to the reading order pane. By going to the Review tab, you'll click the drop-down arrow next to Check Accessibility and select Reading Order pane. And this screenshot shows you an example of the reading order for a particular slide with 5 objects on the slide. And you can easily see all of the objects and rearrange them with those little up and down arrows in the top right. Keep in mind that the fewer objects there are on a slide, the more accessible it is for someone using a screen reader to listen to content. They'll have to tab less often, and it'll just be more straightforward content if you can reduce the number of objects. Next slide, please. So here I have an example of a lot of objects on one slide, and it's because the way that this graph was generated, this bar graph here in my screenshot of 2025 data, and it just has a bar graph of employment data. This bar graph was generated in such a way that it was built out of little pieces. If you look at the reading order pane that I have open here on the right-hand side, you'll see there are 10 different, or probably more than 10 different objects on the slide. There's the slide title, and then everything else is lines, text box, text box, text box, a rectangle, an oval. So it's like shapes and rectangles and lines that were pieced together to create this graph. I would recommend when you see something like this to use the snipping tool, or if you prefer, use the print screen tool on your keyboard in order to turn this into an image. Then you'll only have, and you could delete all of these extra objects on your slide. You'll have one object other than the title, and you can easily write brief alt text for it. Then someone using the screen reader only has to tab through 2 or 3 things on the slide, and they hear a description of the graph very simply as alt text behind the image. Next slide, please. This is something that Johan's going to talk about a little bit more in his video demonstration, and I mentioned it earlier. When you have overlapping objects on a slide, like overlapping images or overlapping text boxes, or maybe your title placeholder is very tall, and then your text box starts in the middle of the placeholder, JAWS or another screen reader often reads that aloud, and it becomes a lot of extra noise that a person needs to listen to. So whenever you are creating your slides, one way to avoid it is using the built-in layouts because they are built not to overlap. Another way is just to hit Control-A to select all the objects on your slides and then resize them or move them so they're not overlapping. And then the last tidbit, best practice, if you ever Control-A to select all the objects on your slide and you realize you've typed so much that you've kind of run out of the placeholder, try to resize that so that all of your text fits within the placeholder so the screen reader doesn't start talking and mentioning pixels and start talking about the dimensions of the placeholder. Next slide, please. So next up, we're going to have this wonderful video demonstration that Johan has put together for us. It is wonderful. He is an expert JAWS reader, so he's going to be using that screen reader to show you some of these best practices in PowerPoint. And Darren, I don't know if you want to take over or say anything about it, or just advance to the next slide and it should start automatically playing.
Thank you very much, Valerie. I appreciate it. Yes, we will get into this in just one moment. I just wanted to speak real quickly to the captions. It sounds like some folks are having difficulty accessing the captions in the Zoom window. I'm going to drop once more the stream text link into the chat just for everybody who would like to access captions either in a separate window while we get this issue resolved. The upcoming video has open captions, so you'll be able to see them on the screen. While we get that resolved, appreciate everybody's patience. Thank you. Yes, let's get into the demo.
Okay, great.
This is a brief video on how a person using a screen reader would access PowerPoint. I'm going to be paying particular attention to the solutions and barriers that are present in this particular PowerPoint. Keep in mind that a lot of these concepts transfer over to PDFs, Word documents, and web pages. For this specific demonstration, I'm using JAWS, which stands for Job Access with Speech. The concepts that I'll be covering can be applied to other screen readers such as NVDA or VoiceOver. So right now the focus is on the thumbnail, the first thumbnail, and I'm going to press F6 to move it to the actual slide.
F6, slide area to select an object, press tab.
So it tells me to press tab, which is very intuitive. I can go ahead and press tab and that should land me on the title.
Title placeholder level 1, using a screen reader to access PowerPoint content.
And it told me title 1. That's really important because title 1, when saved as a PDF, becomes a heading. And without a title, there's going to be no heading on this slide. And I'll demonstrate this a little later in the video to show how these titles in PowerPoint are directly converted to headings within a PDF that can be easily accessed. I'm going to tab one more time.
Body placeholder level 1, Johan Rempel.
Okay, body placeholder level 1. So very intuitive. Now I've dropped down to the slide that's titled Built-in Layouts Maintain Reading Order, and there's actually an image on this slide, and I wanted to demonstrate how effective alt text can really allow a person who's blind to access content without being completely overwhelmed. So let's go ahead and tab through this.
Title placeholder level 1, Built-in Layouts.
Okay, so it gets me to the title, and the tab again.
Object placeholder level 1, bullet built dash.
And it would read the text within that placeholder. Now I'm going to tab again, and I want you to listen carefully. I'm tabbing to an image that offers various Office themes.
Picture screenshot of slide layout options when adding a new slide.
Picture of slide options when adding a new slide. So very, very basic. There's no need to go into a lot of granularity here because it is just an image. It's just an example. Now I wanted to spend just a little bit of time on the reading order and overlapping text boxes slide. So there's two things going on here. And visually, a person looking at this would have no idea. But what's happening here is the tab order is incorrect. So what's displayed is the title, then we have number 1, introduction, and then we have number 2, text can be read out of order. You're going to hear and see as I tab through this that what we see is not the correct tab order that someone who's blind would experience.
Title placeholder level 1, reading order.
Okay, we have the title. I'm going to tab again.
Text box level 1, 2. Text can hear.
And then you can see and hear that it goes to number 2. Now if I tab again, it's going to go to number 1.
Text box level 1, 1. Introduction : adding text boxes to a slide can cause information to be read out of the intended order. Text box overlaps left edge of text box.
So there's two things going on here. It's not only out of order, but you heard JAWS say text box overlaps. So this overlapping can cause additional unnecessary information for a screen reader user. So simply resizing the text box
level
so it's not overlapping provides much less auditory output for a screen reader user, so they can focus on the specifics of what they need to access on the slide versus that additional information on overlapping text boxes. Now I'm dropping down to another slide that does not have a title, and keep in mind the absence of a title is also going to transfer over to the absence of a heading when this is saved as a PDF. So it's really important to include headings even if they're really brief. Now let's talk very briefly about the importance of using effective fonts. This may not apply specifically to someone who's blind, but for someone that's low vision or has a learning disability, or even someone who has difficulty reading fonts that are atypical, this is really important to keep in mind. Typically, sans serif fonts are the most effective, and then you want to avoid using all caps as well. Now, I wanted to touch briefly on low contrast, and this happens all the time with PowerPoints. Higher contrast really benefits everyone across the board. Keep in mind that if you're providing a PowerPoint presentation, maybe the lighting is compromised in the room. You may have people in the back row that are really straining to see your PowerPoint. We think of low vision. We think of people who may have color blindness. Absolutely, color contrast is crucial. But again, this is beneficial for everyone across the board. So we have text here, low contrast text, light blue on a not so light blue background. And we're looking at a color contrast ratio of about 1.43 to 1. So this fails the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines. What you're seeing here is a tool called the Color Contrast Analyzer that's a free download that anybody can use to determine whether you're using sufficient contrast or not. Now, the last two slides I wanted to demonstrate here are a table with some pretty complex data, and I'm going to show you what that sounds like without any alt text.
Title placeholder level 1, image with no alternative text.
Okay, we have the title, and I'm going to tab again.
Picture.
Picture, it simply says picture. So someone who's blind has absolutely no access to any of this information. I'm going to go to the next slide.
Page down to select.
And we have that same image with a very effective alternative text. And I'm going to let JAWS read the entire alternative text. Keep in mind, it's a fine balance between conveying essential information and holding back on providing too much information. That simply would be a level of cognitive load for someone who's blind.
Title placeholder level 1, image with alternative text.
Okay, so I go to the title. Now listen carefully as I tab to this table now that has alternative text.
Picture, a bar chart showing the number of students with disabilities by educational environment. The chart includes the following breakdown: 65% of students are inside the regular class 80% or more of the day. 24% of students are inside the regular class 40% through 79% of the day. 9% of students are inside the regular class less than 40% of the day. 1% of students attend a separate school, and fewer than 1% of students are in other environments outside of the school.
Now, the last thing you heard was the information on less than 1%. So it didn't read 84, 26, 86, 101. So it did a really good job of summarizing this information without information overload. Now what you're seeing is the PDF version of the PowerPoint we were just in. And it's very easy to create this. You simply, within PowerPoint, go to File, Save as PDF, and then it'll convert all of the accessible components into the PDF. So right now we have the heading that's in place.
Heading level 1 using a screen reader.
And I paused JAWS there. And if I go to the next slide, we can hear and see that the title that was in PowerPoint is now the heading.
Heading level 2 screen reader demonstration includes.
And then if we go down arrow,
list of 6 items.
Tells us list of 6 items.
Bullet, importance of built dash. And
then we can go through these one by one. Now keep in mind there's multiple ways in which someone using a screen reader can access content. And one of the ways of listing all of the headings is using an insert F6 keystroke using JAWS.
JAWS version 2025.241.
Now within a dialog box, it lists all of these headings,
Built reading color,
which in PowerPoint were listed as titles. And you may recall the PowerPoint slide that did not have the title on it. It's not going to show up here.
not reading.
So for someone who's blind who wants to very quickly access the headings within a PowerPoint deck in the PDF, if the original PowerPoint does not have a title to it, it's not going to show up here, and they're not going to be able to access that. So this can translate into a huge time save, because if a person creates an accessible PowerPoint and then saves that as a PDF, there's no need to do any additional remediation to that PDF.
Okay, great. And thank you all for watching that demo. There are also some questions in the chat. I know that Valerie has addressed one already, but just wanted to call folks' attention to that who have access to it, who would like to review a question related to marking images as decorative in PowerPoint, and then another related to potentially having the use of AI at your disposal to generate some of these alt text descriptions. So we'll get to those in chat. I want to keep us moving here. So now we're going to talk about exploring Microsoft's new accessibility features. Nora Sinclair is going to lead that, but before we get started, did want to launch one more poll for everybody. So the question is, how familiar are you with the new built-in accessibility assistant and accessibility ribbon in PowerPoint? 1, not familiar. I think I've heard of these features in PowerPoint, but I've never used them. 2, somewhat familiar. I occasionally use these features to investigate issues, but was unaware of any updates. And 3, very familiar. I regularly use these features to resolve issues and am comfortable navigating all accessibility options in PowerPoint. Realizing that you may fall somewhere in between some of these, just your best assessment of your own knowledge. That poll has been launched and responses are starting to trickle in. Thank you all very quickly, too. So sharing the results now. Apologies if you didn't get it in time. I saw the sharing of the poll had ended abruptly, but a lot of folks who are not familiar with these. So this is a good primer into what we're getting into. And then so about 54% not familiar, 38% somewhat familiar, and 8% very familiar. So this is a timely presentation. So with that, we're going to go ahead and continue. I'm going to turn it over to Nora Sinclair. Nora, take it away.
Great. Thank you, Darren. And hi, everyone. I'm glad to be with you today and really excited about these new accessibility tools in PowerPoint, and happy to be here and provide you an overview of some of these tools. We are going to do a demo. I just want to point out what some of these new tools are. There is a new accessibility ribbon tab that puts all of the new accessibility tools in one place, which is much easier to find. There is a new accessibility assistant. It replaces the accessibility checker. It really kind of upgrades it and makes it more functional. There are new color and contrast tools. There's an improved reading order pane, which Valerie has already given you a preview of. There's a new slide title tool. And there's a section, easy to find, for captions and adding subtitles to your presentation and any multimedia as well. Currently, I just wanted to point out that the best access to these new tools is in the Windows desktop version. The tools are also in the Mac version. Almost all of them are there now. These tools have been kind of rolling out over the last 6 months or so. And there was a time when the Windows version had much more of the tools than the Mac version. The Mac version is almost caught up, but it's definitely the desktop versions rather than the online Office 365. They're not quite as fully functional. Next slide, please. So this is a screenshot of the new accessibility ribbon tab. And what's really nice about this is it is divided into several sections that are designed for different purposes. So we still have the ability to check the accessibility, but what's new is this color and contrast section. And this is really designed for making sure that you can check some of the things that Valerie was mentioning. It allows you to inspect your colors and make sure that you are not using color alone to convey information. It helps you double check that. And it also gives you access to the color and contrast tools that are within PowerPoint that will help you make some good decisions. And those tools are really helpful for people who have low vision, people who are colorblind, and they're really helpful for all users, all sighted users. It really improves the experience. And then this next part, the screen reader section, is really awesome. It's really great that it has all of these tools that are together designed to help you make your presentation more usable to screen reader users. And then we have the captions section as well. And we'll take a look at several of these individual tools in just a second here. And next slide. The accessibility assistant. This is the upgraded accessibility checker. It reviews the document and it checks all of these categories, the color and contrast, the media and illustration. It lets you know if alt text is missing or subtitles are missing. This is really great if you have tables. The checker will identify if you are missing table headers or if you have used merged or split cells. And then there is a document structure section as well that will identify if you have missing slide titles or duplicate slide titles. It prompts you to check the reading order. And then the other category is document access. So we're about to take a look at that. Where is the accessibility ribbon? I see that popping up. The document, if it is locked, so that is also in there as well. So next slide, please. Okay, so now I'm going to share my screen. Hopefully everyone can see the demo now.
Can see it, Nora.
Okay, great. Excellent. Thank you so much. All right, so let me go. So where are these tools? You can access the accessibility tools. The check accessibility is still available in the review tab. That is where, if you had been using that tool, it is still there where it previously was. But the new accessibility investigate button, which looks like this with a little person icon, accessibility investigate, it is down here at the bottom left area of the workspace. And if you click on that, that brings up the accessibility ribbon tab that has all of the different items that I was just showing you in the screenshot. It also brings up the accessibility assistant on the right side here. So let's take a look at several of the different tools. And I'm going to start off with the color and contrast tools up here. There's a lot going on in this slide, but I wanted to provide an example so you could see the inspect without color in action. And what it does is helps you check if you have used the color alone to convey information, and then it also helps you kind of get an idea if the colors that you are using might be problematic to someone who is colorblind, especially red and green colorblind. So I've got several colors here. I have red text and I have green text, and then I've got some color combinations of the red and green text, and I have a highlighted text as well. I'm going to click on the inspect without color, and now you see it all in grayscale. So in the grayscale, you can't, there's no red text. So it's okay to use that red text, but as Valerie was saying, you don't want to use it as your only means of conveying the information. So you probably want to choose something else, and green as well. So you don't want to use color alone, and this gives you a good way to inspect it and double check whether you have done that or not. Also, you can see how what was red and green is very difficult to distinguish from each other. So that's another thing that's really helpful there. I'm going to turn the colors back on and take a look at one of the other color and contrast tools. And this is the section that allows you to both double check your text contrast, your font text color against your background color. Valerie talked about that. So let's double check this here. I've got some IDEA data reporting. It's a little difficult to see, but if you don't check it, you may not know if that contrast is difficult or not. I'm going to highlight the text, and then that kind of activates the other tools up here. If I take a look at the font colors, let's see, I've got the high, I'm going to turn that off for just a second. This is what it will look like by default before you make any changes. This is the color text I'm currently using, and it tells me that this is low contrast. So that's incredibly helpful. I can look for some other colors. This is also low contrast. And this tells me I get a message that this is good contrast. So that is an excellent way to make some choices and double check whether you are using appropriate contrast or not. So I'm going to check that, but actually I'm going to go back, and there's another tool here that is new, and this is the high contrast only tool. So if I turn that on, what that does now is showing me only high contrast colors that are available in the theme that I am using. So I can choose these colors, and these are only going to be good contrast. Now, also dark, that also shows me that it is good contrast. Personally, I think I would choose the lighter. But both of these are excellent tools to help you make those decisions regarding the color and contrast, which previously you had to go to another tool, a third-party tool in order to do that. So let's take a look at the next one. Okay, so we're going to take a look at several of the screen reader tools here. I'm going to just go ahead and jump in and take a look at some of these. Let me go to the next slide. Okay, I'm going to start off here with the slide title tool. This is really helpful. I can add a slide title if I'm missing a slide title. I can also add a hidden slide title, which can be very useful if you have a very large image that you would like to highlight. And we had workarounds in the past to try to do this type of thing, but now it's built in. So I'm going to go up here to slide title and choose add hidden slide title. And now I can, it'll place the slide title off screen, but it will be read by a screen reader, but it is hidden. So that's an excellent way to do that. If I didn't want a hidden slide title, this is where I would also add a typical slide title as well. So I'm going to go back up here to my accessibility tab and go to my next tool is the reading order pane. And Valerie talked about the importance of this. One way to check it when you're on your slide, your object order, is to use your tabs and tab through. Okay, that shows me it is in the correct order. But if I needed to make a change, I'm going to the reading order pane here. It's really much improved over the previous way that this was designed. Now, if I need to make a change, I can select where I want to, which object I would like to move, and I can use the up and down arrows, which is incredibly helpful. Something else that is new here is the information is showing the alt text as well. So I'm going to double click here and show you that on this selected reading order object here, it's also showing me my alt text description that I have added. So this is a good way to check both your reading order and make sure that you have your alt text descriptions added and read over them in an easier way than has been typical in the past. So let me go. Okay, so alt text, got a lot going on here, but the alt text tool, I wanted to point out that it is available all over the place. It's if someone is new to accessibility, they probably are going to stumble upon the alt text tool now because it is so many different places. It is here in the screen reader section. It is also over in the right side over here in this toolbar all the way to the right. If I'm missing alt text somewhere, then it's going to pop up over here and allow me to add it there. It is also in the picture format. I want to show that too, because if someone is less familiar with accessibility, they might be more familiar with going to the picture format in order to resize their picture. So it's also available there. So it's really great that if you're not aware of it, you're probably going to find it. So, which is really cool. I also wanted to show, as Valerie pointed out, that it's really important. I have all of those individual images on my previous slide, they're grouped together, but this is really great now too, that the group tool has been added to the screen reader tool section as well. So it's a lot easier to find. Actually, when I first was exploring this, I was looking for it in the previous place and had a hard time finding it. But now that it is added to the screen reader section, it is much easier to find. So I could group all of these together right here. So that is a good way to do that. Let me go to the next one. Actually, you know what? I'm going to go back. There was a question about marking as decorative, and that is up here as well. You can easily mark something as decorative. You want to make sure that you do reserve that for something that is not conveying information, if that is just decorative. So, you know, many times, most times you want to add alt text, but you do have this option if it is not adding or conveying any additional information. So it's easier to find. I do not have a URL here on my slides, but the link text is also added to the screen reader section as well. So that is also very easy to find as well. Okay, the captions and the subtitles, I'm not going to spend too much time here, just point out that if you do have a video that you can easily add, I say easily, but you have the option to add your captions. If you have a file, you can add your captions to your media within PowerPoint. You can also add captions if you are recording your own narration and adding that to your presentation. You can add that there as well. So I want to point out just a couple of things. I'm going to go back to the Accessibility Investigate, and that opens up the Accessibility Assistant over here on the right. It is really very functional. You can check things as you're working. If you want to look at just one slide, you can turn that on here and it would check only one particular slide. You can keep it going and you can check all of the slides. A couple, I'll just point out here some of the errors that it checks for if you have hard to read text. This is cool. You click on it, it goes exactly to where you have the problem, and it even offers you some colors to try. So that is really excellent. And I think I just have one more thing I want to point out here. Missing slide titles. That is really, that can be corrected within this accessibility assistant as well. And if you did not check your reading order, well, it's going to prompt you every time to check your reading order, because that's something that has to be done. The tool is not able to check that for you. So you have to, it's going to prompt you to check it. The last thing I wanted to point out is that the accessibility help resources are also really, really great. They are up here in the top right-hand corner. If you click on it, it offers you a lot of extensive information with links to other resources that Microsoft has put together, and they really, really have improved all of their resources. So that is the overview, and I am going to turn it back over to Darren now. I'm going to stop sharing. Go ahead. Thank you.
Sorry. Thank you very much, Nora. I appreciate it. Appreciate you getting all of that information in with the remaining time that we have. Seeing as we are at the final 2 minutes, coming up on 1 minute, I wanted to share again our evaluation information. So this is an anonymous evaluation survey for you to provide feedback on this presentation and also information that could inform future presentations. To the right of the screen, you will find a URL, QR code, and then the full link there at the bottom, as well as a hyperlink. This will be included in a follow-up email as well. And if there are any questions that we can answer quickly, please feel free to drop them in chat. Apologies for the brief QA, but there was a lot of engagement in chat that we were able to get to in real time, which is fantastic. Just about our final slide, I wanted to share some resources and available support. So we have a new ADA Title II update and overview. This is a one-page document that discusses some of the defines and outlines the impact of these ADA updates. And my colleague Emily Deaver has also shared some links in chat regarding cognitive load. We have another resource on that as well that just went up. And soon we will have an accessibility guide for Microsoft PowerPoint. This will be a comprehensive guide that includes information you saw in this presentation, as well as much, much more. I also wanted to take this moment for those of you who may not be aware of another OSAP, one of our partners. They posted a ADA Title II web and mobile accessibility requirements roadmap. So I just wanted to share that as well. And then, as always, please feel free to reach out to us if you have any needs related to IDA data accessibility, or whether it's products, documentation, digital web accessibility. And we have any guide for Microsoft Word I saw come in. We do have that available in chat, and we can provide that. If my colleague wouldn't mind grabbing that link, we can provide that in a moment as well. But yes, on our website, weissta.org, weissta.org. You can go to our publications and find a Microsoft Word accessibility guide, as well as the upcoming PowerPoint accessibility guide. We also have a Microsoft Excel guide that is up there as well. So the PowerPoint guide will kind of round out that trio. Okay, great. Well, we are officially at the top of the hour. That was a lot of information. If you still have questions, please feel free to reach out to us at WeisTA, or go to weisTA.org. You can reach us by email at contact@weisTA.org. We would love to hear from you, engage with you, hear about your needs, and what help you might need. So thank you all for attending. Appreciate this. We will make sure to reach out to you all with the survey link, as well as relevant resources. And thank you to our presenters, Nora and Valerie. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Darren. Thank you, Nora. All of you are now experts in PowerPoint.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you all.